This video is sponsored by HelloFresh, America's #1 meal kit. Microsoft really couldn't have picked a better time to release its new Surface Duo 2, because it's an Android phone built to help you do a lot of things at once. And for tech reviewers, there is no busier time than the month so insane we gave it a new name. So, to see just how well this new Duo does, or doesn't do, at helping me keep my head on straight, I decided to take a page out of my buddy TheUnlockr's book and take you along for part of an atypical Techtober day in Brooklyn. I'm Michael Fisher. I believe you know my friend David Cogen. Today, we're doing a day in Dumbo on the Duo 2. Also, why Dumbo for the Duo? Well, the down under Manhattan Bridge overpass neighborhood of Brooklyn has been an influencer mecca for years, thanks to the photogenic opportunities it offers. It's also the home of Brooklyn's first new public library to be built since the year I was born. And if there's a phone more book-like than the Surface Duo, I haven't seen it. So what better venue to test the Duo 2's most improved piece of hardware? That's right. In place of last year's glorified webcam is an honest-to-panos triple camera array prominently protruding from the phone's posterior. It's angled, so the phone can close flush with it when it's folded back, and it protrudes because it has to. The only way to squeeze ultra-wide, wide, and telephoto cameras, plus optical stabilization for those last two, into a phone this thin is to make it a little bit thicker. And a little more awkward, too. Yeah. Fold the phone back on itself, and instead of the sheer-sided slab of last year, the Duo 2 better resembles a wedge of cheese. Also, the position of that camera means you have to keep the phone open while using it, but Microsoft has at least put some thought into that. The second screen now becomes an instant preview while you're shooting, and a clever photo editor when you're done. If you're out and about without a David to snap a selfie for you, the Duo 2 can become its own tripod, just like those foldables I love so much. And speaking of selfies, the new front-facing camera is just fine for the video calls for which it's intended, like the half-hour Teams meeting I enjoyed with Daniel Rubino over 5G. The only complaint I had was that the speakers, while louder than last year's, still didn't get quite loud enough. But take the Duo 2's photo and video, put them alongside those from any other flagship or high-end smartphone. It's a different story. I shot alongside the iPhone 13 Pro for this video, and I don't think I'll be shocking anyone when I say the Duo 2 didn't measure up. Contrast, dynamic range, night mode, frame rate, you name it, the Duo's camera is mediocre through and through. In video mode, its automatic exposure careens wildly between extremes, like a 2013 budget phone. And the telephoto camera offers only 2x zoom, which even the traditionally slow Apple has finally upgraded to 3x optical. The Duo 2 is also more restrictive when it comes to how you use it. The accelerometer still behaves like it does on a conventional phone, so often I wanted to shoot in landscape, but ended up shooting in portrait by accident. And if you want to play back the video you just shot in that clever new span mode preview, don't try to adjust the volume, because the Duo will still treat it as a shutter button by default. You need to first bring the preview back to a single screen, which also isn't the smoothest process. Look, in a vacuum, this camera is fine, if you stick mainly to stills and you're willing to snapseed a bit. But when you put a camera bump this big on what was formerly one of the sleekest smartphone designs ever, one that costs as much as this one does, I think people have a right to expect more than fine. I'm going to keep sharing samples from the Duo 2 as we go on, and David has comparisons with many more phones in his real-world test, which I'll link below. But I want to move on from camera chatter to talk a little bit about what Microsoft got right with this phone. Our first stop in Dumbo is a calming amalgamation of coffee shop, Japanese restaurant, art gallery, and bookstore. In other words, the perfect venue to showcase the Surface Duo 2's hardware. Despite being a bit thicker than its predecessor, it fits nicely into a pocket, and while I'd buy the white version if I were splashing the cash, the new Obsidian colorway is also quite striking. The displays are perfectly color-synced, refresh at 90 Hz, peak at 800 nits of brightness, and now they curve at the hinge, evoking the pages of a book while also enabling a bit of cleverness I'll come back to in a sec. The inner glass has also been upgraded to Gorilla Glass Victus, whose coating is so silky you don't want to stop touching it. It's just a beautiful product. Even Microsoft's case is better this year, if you want to protect the Gorilla Glass 6 exterior. Well, half of it, anyway. It snaps onto the front, some stick-on rails buff up the back half, and it serves as a magnetic landing pad for the optional Surface Slim Pen 2, which charges while it's docked. I love that the Duo 2 gives its stylus a proper home, but like Rubino, I was bummed at how little there was to actually do with it. No haptic support, no extensive suite of built-in apps or features, and the button is useless. You can draw and you can erase. And Microsoft has promised an Outlook update to let you draw directly within an email, which I was looking forward to testing but wasn't ready by press time. At least if more features do come to the pen side of things, the hardware is ready for it, and the pen stuck on there just completes the book analogy so beautifully that I kind of love it anyway. Speaking of books, let's hit that library and start talking battery life right after this.
I've lost count of all the meals for 2 or meals for 3 I've cooked up during all the time we've spent at home this past year.
And HelloFresh was great for that, but it's also great now that we can finally have friends over.
We went to college together, back when I only knew how to make macaroni and cheese.
This video is sponsored by HelloFresh, the meal delivery service so flexible you can plan out your next few months of meals right from your phone or computer. You'll get fresh ingredients delivered to your home with no need to mask up and hit the grocery store. And those ingredients include everything you need to make a meal that's as healthy, or as filling, or as carb-smart, or as vegetarian or meatitarian as you want. I've been a paying customer for 8 months at this point, and I can tell you that HelloFresh is always delicious, no matter which options you go for. And no matter how bad you still might be at knife work or keeping the kitchen clean after all that time, you'll still be surprised at how easily a HelloFresh meal comes together. It usually takes me about 40 minutes, but quick and easy options like sesame beef tacos and oven-ready pizzas can get you down to 20.
And my favorite part is still that flexibility. If plans change and you decide to go out to eat or disinvite some friends instead, you can just skip that week.
Go to HelloFresh.com and use code MrMobile14 to get 14 free meals, plus free shipping. One more time, go to HelloFresh.com and use code MrMobile14 to get 14 free meals, plus free shipping. Thanks to HelloFresh for sponsoring this video. Onward to what was intended to be the principal focus of the day, the Adams Street Library, a former warehouse nestled beside Brooklyn Bridge Park in a devastatingly photogenic part of the metropolis I'm still tickled to call home. Well, it turns out the library, while beautiful, is also the kind of place where the wall bordering the children's area has a bunch of architecturally entrancing but acoustically transparent holes.
That's why some libraries make walls without holes in them.
Nevertheless, we had to hang for a while because 5 hours after the day started, I'd already blown through the Surface Duo 2's entire battery, the phone dying just as I sat down. A look at the power consumption report showed the principal culprits to be Google Photos and the camera itself, and that makes sense. I saw much better endurance on more typical workdays, which forces me to wonder how much of the excellent endurance I reported on last year's Duo came from my never wanting to use its terrible camera. Anyway, I plugged in, and in a little under an hour, I'd recovered about 65% of a full charge, which I didn't even have to open the phone to find out, thanks to that new glance bar.
But as with so many things about the Duo 2, my love for that concept is equaled by my frustration with its execution.
The glance bar is an ingenious use of the curved display edges to show you the time, inbound calls, and notifications, like an always-on display. But in my testing, the missed alerts didn't always appear, or they appeared only to vanish a second later. And even if they worked as intended, the glance bar only supports bare-bones notifications like missed calls, texts, team pings, and low battery alerts. As yet, there's no third-party app support. So this great idea in theory is kind of worthless in practice. And that truism extends beyond the glance bar and even beyond the camera, which, during the course of dinner, drinks, and a delightfully unexpected detour to a jazz performance at a bar under the Manhattan Bridge, fully drives the point home that it's not at all suited for this kind of evening. As an excuse to use both screens at once, David recommends that I learn more about the beer I'm pondering on the menu, so I download Untapped, and I do. The dual screens also came in handy when I needed to look up whatever Batarja Demugene is.
Oh dear. Yes, this did come in handy. I will not be having any roe on my spaghetti.
And when I needed to make sure my calendar was cleared for my guest spot on the Engadget podcast. And when David and I decided to drunkenly calculate YouTube analytics, like you do. But while it is legitimately handy for those niche occasions, and neat for a photo app, for a few reasons, it's usually just faster to do the same thing on a phone that's not the Duo 2. The problem is most damning in the harsh light of the next day. Calling the bar from last night to see if they found the tripod I drunkenly left there is awkward. Not because I'm embarrassed, but because it's not all that comfortable to talk on a cheese wedge. And when I pivot back to the multitasking the Duo 2 is supposed to help with, it keeps getting in its own way. Sometimes apps open links on the facing screen, like they're supposed to. Other times, they don't. Sometimes they do when you don't want them to, because it serves no purpose to split the interface this way. Switching screens is smoother now, thanks to the phone defaulting to the right side, but it still has hiccups, like apps sometimes restarting when they switch over. One day, the notification shade moved into the gutter for no reason. Another day, the keyboard bumped up into the same place and made the top row inaccessible. And that keyboard is the worst thing of all. Whether you're using Microsoft's Swift key, which I find not very good, or my preferred Gboard, the touch response issue that was the biggest reason I couldn't use the Duo last year, well, it's improved on Duo 2, I'll give them that, but it is still there. A barely perceptible lag when typing, mixed with a propensity to confuse taps for swipes and vice versa. It makes every touch interaction just inconsistent enough that despite its prodigious spec sheet, I feel like this phone just isn't keeping up with me. And I'd love to be able to say it's just me, folks, but check out pretty much every other review out there for the same observation. I love the idea of the Duo just as much as I did last year. This is still my favorite Kindle. And without those touch issues, it would stand a good chance of being one of my favorite portable consoles, too, thanks to Xbox Game Pass. And from a work standpoint, all you need to do is run Outlook, Calendar, and Inbox side by side to see just how fantastic this little pocket PC could be. But the bugs and the compromises and the very valid concern that some of them might still be here next year because some of them are from last year, folks, that's the kind of thing you expect from a 10-year-old Android phone. Not something built for 2021, not one whose stated purpose is to make your work easier, and not something that costs $1,500. This review was produced following 6 days, with a Surface Duo 2 review sample provided by Microsoft, and if you're saying that's not enough time for a full review, hey, part of me agrees, which is why I'll continue to check in with this device into the new year. If it gets some big upgrades that fundamentally change the experience, watch for a re-review on my Into the Fold series, and subscribe to the Mr. Mobile so you don't miss it. As always, neither Microsoft nor any other manufacturer was given editorial input, copy approval rights, or an early preview of this video. They're seeing it for the first time right alongside you. And finally, check out David Cogen's real-world test to see the same day from a different viewpoint, and again, a lot more camera comparisons. Until next time, thanks for watching, and stay mobile, my friends.